How's it going, guys? This is Gamer Logic, Mike Murtis, and we're doing something a little bit different. As you know, I've done game room tours in the past, but I've never actually done one in front of the camera. So my little brother Matt, which you're familiar with, he's been on various episodes, he's been on the live shows and stuff like that. He's kind of going to hold the camera, and I'm going to kind of go through some of my favorite stuff in my various game rooms, and we're literally going to cover everything here. We're going to talk about the modern game room I have, or this isn't the modern stuff, this is a little bit of everything up here, from the retro stuff to the modern stuff to some of the key pieces in my collection as well as other things, and some of my box stuff. You know, we're going to cover some great stuff up here. I'm going to show you guys my modern gaming rig as far as what's downstairs, what I use when we're in our family room. And of course, we're going to go check out the arcade as well. So we're just going to float around the room a little bit here and talk a little bit about the history of the game room here. So Matt, why don't you come inside here and I'll shut the door a little bit just to give you the whole 360, if you will. So yeah, this room has a lot of stuff in it. And when we first moved into this house, this room was empty as you could imagine it being, you know. It started out as just a room to hold some TVs and some monitors and stuff because we were big Halo fans. And Matt, I'm sure you remember coming over, we had like 7 or 8 Xboxes, we had 4 TVs in here, 4 TVs out there, 4 TVs in the next room, network cable running all over the place, and we would just play Halo, as well as Halo 2, you know. Halo 2 was the first one that had Xbox Live, but the original Halo was system link based, so we always played on that, which was a lot of fun. So it turned into just a room for Xbox stuff, and then I ended up hanging out here more when it came to Xbox Live, so I didn't tie up the main TV. You know, I used a monitor and a component to VGA conversion and stuff so I could get in things. And then eventually I decided, you know, I got all my retro stuff in boxes, old Nintendo games, Super Nintendo games, and we're talking maybe like 2003, 2004. And I decided that, man, I didn't care if I used this room, and I was already using it for my music stuff, so let's start making it a little bit more mine. And well, we're in 2013 now, we've been in this house for a little over 11 years, and this room is kind of blown up as the ultimate gaming mecca for me, basically. And I mean, Matt's already panned around the room, but all this stuff has some kind of sentimental value to me, or stuff I really enjoy. And this is where I, you know, not only play a majority of my video games, but this is where I edit stuff. And I guess, well, we can start with kind of the facet of any video game collection, and that would be right behind you, Matt. And that would be kind of the system wing. And I've changed this so many freaking times. I've done so many different shelves of things, and this is kind of the final chapter of these shelves, if you will. It has everything that I play, and I guess we can just kind of start from the top left here. This is kind of like the modern wing. I actually just put this together yesterday. I had this stuff a little all over the place, different shelf. I moved this over because it makes a little bit more sense, but I got my Xbox 360 unit here, which actually used to be yours, I think, at one time. This is where I do a lot of my capturing for my Xbox 360 games, footage-wise, and I also use it to play, obviously. The Wii, a buddy of mine actually donated that to me, which was really awesome, and I have a USB drive attached to it so I can play like import games as well as other things. Fatal Frame 4, which never came out over here. They did an English translation patch for it. PlayStation 3, of course, I don't play too much PlayStation 3. Honestly, I use PlayStation 3 more for Blu-ray than anything, but there are the occasional exclusive that comes out for it that's really enjoyable. Now we go down here, and we get a little bit more into the retro stuff. My Nintendo 64 system, Jungle Green, because that's just badass, with a EverDrive cartridge. And if you're not familiar with the EverDrive, what this actually is it's a flash card that it lets you do a little SD card in the inside of it. And this one is a 16 gigabyte card, but this lets you load any N64 ROM onto it, and you can actually play it on the actual hardware, which is awesome. It's a really great unit, really great for the fact that I have a ton of 64 titles, and they never put the labels on the goddamn top of them where I stack them, so it's a pain in the ass going through them. Here, I throw them on here, it's good to go unless I have issues with the emulation. PS2 Mini, of course. My Super Nintendo, which was a key system in my childhood as well as Matt's, you know, great memories of Street Fighter 2 and everything. flash cart in here. This is a Super NES Power Pack. Yeah, they have SNES EverDrives and stuff like that, but this was the first. This was what works best for me. Compact flash, you play anything from local American games, import games, PAL games, all sorts of good stuff. So great system, great flash cart. Another game system that I have tons of games for, but you know, sometimes it's easier to throw them on the flash cart. Down below we've got the Jaguar, the Atari Jaguar, that I actually have only fired up a few times. I got a decent amount of games for it, and that's one of those systems I will dive into eventually. The sole reason I own it is for Aliens vs. Predator, which, funny enough, is actually coming out with a new one. Next to that we have the Saturn. Great system. My primary reason for owning that is the import copy of Dracula X Symphony of the Night, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, special bonus edition. Of course, there were a lot of other great games for the Saturn, like the Panzer Dragoon series and all that, but, you know, Saturn. And it's a shame it didn't work out a little bit better over here. It was pretty decent over in Japan. Some stuff on the bottom here. We got the Nintendo GameCube, and next to it, its older brother, the Nintendo Entertainment System, of course. Classic system. Sitting underneath that is my Sony VHS, which I actually use a couple things for. I actually picked this up at a flea market recently. The big thing is actually to convert over old VHS tapes. I posted a I Remember where I had my Christmas memories and stuff, or my birthday memories, where I found Maniac Mansion, or I got Maniac Mansion for my birthday. And we have a VCR downstairs that we take out of our exercise room / media room downstairs. And it never fails. Every time I take it up here and go to record something, my wife wants to do a yoga video. So I finally decided, you know what, I'm just going to buy a VCR and take care of it. So instrumental in converting stuff is the VCR, but another deal with this is the fact that it is handy as hell when it comes to RF only components. A good example of that is the, if you look over here, Matt, is the Nintendo Famicom. This does not have composite out. It doesn't have S-video or anything like that. I mean, you're talking original 1983 technology here, RF only. So in order for me to be able to do any kind of live or video capturing or anything with this, I need a way to get RF to my video capture card equipment. And the way you can do that is you take the RF out, you run it into a VCR through the RF in, and then if the VCR has just regular composite yellow out as well as red and white audio cables, you're good to go. It looks good, it sounds good depending on your cable and of course the VCR, but that's kind of my long-winded explanation to say that I use that to get any of my RF units, like the Atari 7800, the Famicom, and even the TurboGrafx-CD capable of being recorded footage-wise. So, and kind of back onto the top of the shelf here. If we look up here, we got a Neo Geo CD, as well as a Panasonic 3DO and a Sega JVC XI. A lot of the CD-based systems. Neo Geo CD I picked up at the Midwest Gaming Classic a number of years ago, and I love it. It's a very cool system. A lot of people bitch about the load times on it. It's not that bad until you get to the last gen amount of games for the system. It is really a nice way to get into Neo Geo if you're looking to go for an inexpensive route. I do have an AES as well, which I'll point out in a second, but definitely the cheap way to go, Neo Geo CD. Panasonic 3DO is Panasonic 3DO. There's some decent games on there. And the JVC XI is kind of the ultimate system in terms of being able to do Sega CD and cartridge in one shot. Really enjoyable, plays well. Games like Snatcher or any other CD-based games have no issues playing whatsoever. Come down on the bottom here, the next shelf, and we have a PS1, which is a modified PS1, so I can play Japanese imports as well as CDR games. You know, there's a lot of great stuff that came out on the Japanese market for PlayStation that never came out here. But how do you know if it's good? How do you know if it's shit? And how do you know if you can play it? Akira for Famicom, really good example. You think you'd be able to play it, right? You pop it in, awesome intro, and it turns out to be a text-based adventure. Well, now you're kind of screwed unless you know Japanese. So what I'll typically do with this is I'll burn a Japanese ROM, or I should say image, and see if the game is really cool. Like Cowboy Bebop is freaking awesome. And I discovered that basically through burning the image and playing it, so that's one of those games I'm on the hunt for eventually, is a copy of Cowboy Bebop.